Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, my precious pack, and welcome back to VEGA Conflict. Before I get started with this video, there was a question asked by the Heavy, and he was wondering which is better, the on-guard overdrive generator or the Repost overdrive generator. Well, that's easy. The Repost, because most of the time you're going to take damage on your carrier no matter how you try to avoid it. And the amount of damage you take will trigger the Repost, which in turn will actually give you the following buffs. For taking 2,500 damage, it will activate for 3 seconds, and it will recharge 30% of the shields on the carrier in those 3 seconds. It will also activate a defensive field, which will increase the fleet's shield defense by 10%, giving them a complete 100% defense if there is no bypass or anything on them, making it so that the target has to go through the shields. Well, it has to break the shields before it can get to them. It will give them 15% increased damage, and it will also regenerate them by 10% for 3 seconds as well, except for this, it just says fleet regeneration rate 10%. Well, that's through testing. You already know that it's 30% because it's 10% back per second, just like with the actual ship itself. And again, no recharge delay, so it just starts charging. It's a very, very good and very, very easy to remember and how to use it. The best way to use it is to have your carrier immediately behind one of your 5 cruisers if you're using a fleet setup like mine, so that area of effect splash damage weapons will touch the carrier, and that will actually trigger the bonus. Now, in this case, typically I'd tell you to match a Altarian fleet with someone like Tatiana. Well, in this case, because you want the actual health on the Sovereign to be able to activate the overdrive, in this case you're going to go with Victoria. And it'll seem like a waste because you get increased damage for the entire fleet using Tatiana. But with Victoria, you get the increased health, which will allow you to activate the Repost multiple times, and it will increase the health of every individual ship by, if you have her at max rank, 12,440, on top of whatever they already have. So you can typically increase the hit points of a max rank Bastion by 50%. Okay, with that out of the way, what is the primary point of this video? Well, it's going to be the Altarian Hobbler and the new carrier. Now, exactly what does the carrier represent? Just how strong is it, and what can you do to just kick back and enjoy it? Well, how I've been enjoying the little ship is actually through its overdrive. Let's just take it out of the fleet real quick and take a look at its overdrives. The first is the Retaliation Overdrive. When 3 or more enemies enter the carrier's firing arc, it triggers a barrage of slow-moving, long-range missiles, and I have already tested this, and they are not affected by any of Victoria's bonuses, so you can't increase the movement speed, AoE, or anything like that of them. You can of the standard missiles that go on the ship, though, but they are an extremely good weapon for countering squadrons, because they launch in every direction, as you'll see. They're extremely good for dealing with corvette swarms, such as those in the mothership targets, because it's shooting out in every direction at once. There are gaps in it that you can easily hide in if you're PvPing against it, but overall you're not going to be able to do that. The AI won't be able to. And the AoE of the individual missiles is actually extremely good with 600 meters. So if you more or less fire at point blank, which is why I actually have the fitting I have for my carrier, so there is no dead spot. The missiles will fire from point blank, and as it shows, they have a 0 to 8,000 meter range. The damage per second value is extremely low of them, though, for the individual missiles, so they were, in my eyes, they're going to be mainly good for countering squadrons, drones, and the corvette spawns from the mothership targets. Onto the other overdrive, Surcease. When the Gargoyle Carrier takes 1,750 damage, it interrupts active fire of ships in range. Now, what this means is that so long as it's firing on a target, they actually can't fire, because I actually tested it and I was messing around with it earlier, and as you're going to see, When it takes that damage and its overdrive activates, you fire actively on a single ship, and you can lock their weapons down. Now, it doesn't last permanently, and I actually haven't paid attention to how long it lasts. I think it's just a quick burst, and it just disrupts it, so it would be good for fighting ships like ones with extremely long reload time, such as another carrier, because you could interrupt the firing cycle of a Sovereign or another Gargoyle this way. The other ones are beam class weapons, any ships with weapons that use beams, because they would have to charge up over time, and if you interrupt the damage to charge up before it has a chance to reach max, you're going to be reducing damage and force them to restart, and things like that. Now this does get better as it ranks up, because as you can see for rank 5, which you can jump to rank 6, Retaliation, the damage per second goes up, but nothing else changes except for the piercing. And the piercing, each missile can pass through targets as they go along, and this is another thing where it came in extremely good that I was paying attention to against mothership targets when they're available. A lot of the times the corvettes that spawn will typically be bunched up, and one missile will be able to pass through them all, and because it's dealing AoE damage and it's passing through them, it's causing extremely heavy damage, so you're going to get a lot more damage out of a single missile that could have been useless to begin with, instead of what it is. And again, this is just a built-in weapon. All you have to do is have weapons on board to be able to use it. And the Surcease, it actually doesn't really do anything for the increase. It's still the same. It doesn't reduce the amount of health you have to take or anything like that. And that's about it. Oh no, wait. There was the whole RPS change and things like that, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to go on, and I'm going to attack a target, and I'm going to go and end the video shortly after, because I've talked about the carrier a bit, and overall, the value of the carrier cannot be understated, because again, it's a new carrier, it's Umbra, so it has regenerating armor that's only 10% of damage will bleed through. So all you have to do is just heavily armor it, add Victoria, or any other health boosting commander, as well as heavy missile damage. And the missile damage and stuff only affects the active weapons, which are the weapons you equip to it, and not the overdrive weapons, because those are a weapon class all their own. And I'd have to do even further testing, just to see what could happen to them or anything like that. But let's go ahead and let's find a Altarian Hobbler and attack it. Okay, change in plan, we're going to attack a level 70 fleet instead. And this is the Hobbler fleet, and it's fairly easy, and I'm going to say focus fire on a single target at a time so you can bring the full damage per second of the carrier against a single target. And what you're going to do is you're going to do the same thing you always do, you're just going to run away. And I do want the targets to bunch up a bit, because the AoE on the hammer missiles is actually fairly good. And there's the missile effect, like I said. And see, at close range it would be exceptionally good because of the spread on the weapons, but at long ranges it's not going to be as good as it could be. But again, it's constant damage going out that it's continuously firing randomly. Well, not randomly, it's on a set time frame. Let's go back to base. And now we wait for the ship to come back, and we can check the repair time. But so far, the carrier has been fairly straightforward in terms of performance. It performs exactly how all carriers do nowadays, from the Sovereign and up. They're not carriers because they don't launch squadrons, because squadrons are a liability that no one should ever have to deal with, because why would you want a squadron that loses 90% of its health and only does 5% damage when you could have a heavy missile platform that floats around just decimating stuff at effectively the same ranges you'd be launching the squadrons to anyways, right? Well, it's fairly straightforward for the carrier. The hammer missile, as you saw, it's a direct fire weapon, and it can miss quite easily against most targets. So I'd recommend mixing the weapon types. So it would be hammer missile and cyclotrons like what I have. I do have a fitting to try out squadrons as well, but I doubt that I'm going to mass produce or use it just because they're squadrons. They're not all that viable in most cases. Free repair time by 5 seconds. Now that's extremely lucky. So overall, the new carrier is interesting to play with. Its overdrives are a lot, well, they're exactly the same activation style as the overdrives we already have for the Sovereign. One, you have to take damage on your health to activate. The other, you have to is activated via being swarmed. So, you know, one is to help counter being swarmed and stuff like that, and the other is mainly for helping to disrupt weapons. Now, I'm going to build multiple carriers, and I have another one started already. But so far, the carrier is interesting. It seems if we get a projectile weapon for them, which will most likely be introduced with Pharmacon Carrier, we'll see a very, very different change in carriers due to that weapon instead of the previous weapons, because we have a beam weapon, missile weapon, all we need is a kinetic weapon, and we have a full set. And as long as each carrier has 6 squadron slots, all we have to do is just equip 2, 2, and 2 and mix each of the weapon types, because most players, they can't resist all the damage types, so doing a little bit of damage of each type will allow you to bleed a little bit more into the target. But that's going to be it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the little showcase of the carrier. It's not the biggest carrier either, because I was testing against the planetary Targus, and the Ragnarok carrier is actually larger than it. It is a fairly small carrier, and I actually like the fact that it's fairly small because it doesn't have squadron slots. It has built-in weapons, and I would rather see it as a smaller vessel because it's not carrying squadrons, reserve crews, or anything like that for the squadrons, or drones, or anything like that. It has built-in weapon systems, and it's doing its job using said weapon systems. But this is going to end this video here. If you guys liked the video, feel free to leave a like, comment your favorite part, or ask any questions you may have, anything like that. If you want to see more like this, most definitely leave a like, because it'll let me know that you guys want to see more like this. If you guys want to see more like this anyways, feel free to subscribe and browse through the videos on the channel, because there's plenty around. There's tutorials for certain targets, there is a few different games, playthroughs, things like that, just random things. And as always, everybody, stay safe out there in the void, and I will see you later.